taken, I think, in 2000, no,
2019.
10 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago. Around 2013, 2014.
How about this one?
This must have been on Mother's Day in 2015 or 2014 there. Yeah.
It looks like 1950, covering the World War.
We didn't have color cameras by then. Anyway, umenipata hapo nitakutafutia.
Anyway, happy World Press Freedom Day to you too.
Thank you,
Fred. I know you've been here for quite a while.
Let me just say we'll be having that conversation later today on the show with the senior editors, just to see exactly how the media industry is faring in Kenya, even as we try to adjust into the kind of environments we have.
Anyway, now let's take a look at the headlines.
Oh yes, and as expected, change of guard is a big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. Pictures of the senior military officers there. General Francis Kahariri is now the Chief of Defense Forces, and other promotions that were declared yesterday by by the National Defense Council. Yes, President William Ruto yesterday adhered to the Tonje rules, and that is very important. When he promoted the Lieutenant General to General, he's now 4-star General and is the Chief of Defense Forces. The other notable appointments, of course, Major General Fatuma Ahmed, who becomes the first ever female service commander in Kenya.
Yes.
She's now Commander of the Air Force.
Historical matters there on the Standard, the same story. Ruto plays by the rules in KDF changes. We'll be getting to that, but then a very interesting bit here.
Yes, and you know, people are talking about just how crisp and clean this white uniform of the CDF looks. Yes.
Imagine if it was purple.
No, that's not good. Purple, we agreed, it doesn't look nice. Even on that Kaunda suit, it doesn't.
That is a standard for you. We'll be getting into the pulse later with Bansi Kifika Imta.
Oh yes. The beleaguered mythical Linturi makes it to the front page of Taifa Leo. Wanasema Linturi apata sio ya kupita ile nyingine
ya enda
tokelezea. Upepetevu, wanasema waziri wa kilimo amekashifiwa vikali kutokana na uuzaji wa mbolea feki kwa wakulima waliotaka fertilizer ya ruzuku. Habari kuu pia pale kuna mambo ya Kahariri. Jeshi Kahariri arithi kiti cha Ogola, na bunge la Amerika la alika Ruto pia kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hilo.
Kwenye gazeti la Business Daily, Kenya taps Israeli loan for upgrade of air defense.
And you know, the funny thing is that Israel is at war, but they can afford to actually give us money. The irony of it. We are a peaceful country.
All right. Getting into, before we actually get into other dailies, get into People Daily. They say why Ruto settled on Kahariri. It's the same big story for today. Collage of photos of the top military leaders there, including the new CDF, Charles Kahariri. General Charles Kahariri, yes. And
now on the top strip there, the story of a person holding the position of CS is not a small person. A CS is a member of cabinet. A motion of impeachment is a tool of last resort. Linturi on the cross as MP kick-off impeachment trial is a big headline on the front page of the People Daily.
Onto the Star, Biden elevates Ruto in Africa charm offensive.
The Star. World Press Freedom Day, it is a freedom tool.
Oh yes.
It's something different, probably in the anticipated travel to the US by President William Ruto.
Notably, they also have the big story for today.
Rightly so.
Yeah, rightly so.
The appointments in the military. And it makes it to the front page. Let's take a look at what's headlining in the neighboring countries. In Uganda, censors Ugandans to answer 180 questions, and you said it's time for you to become a Ugandan now.
This is happening on 9th of May. That's this coming next week on Friday, actually. So in case you feel like upper taxes imekuwa nyingi in Kenya, head into Uganda.
The tax issue is still present in Uganda as well. You remember they were on strike just the other day. They say babies born on or after May 10th will not be counted in this census that happens, on May the 9th.
I feel like Kenya and Uganda is just an extension of the same.
But something interesting there in matters transport. Excitement greets return of passenger train in Uganda. The Uganda Railways Corporation has resumed commuter transport between Kampala and Nanamwe in our Kisii district. They had been, this is after a whole year of closure for rehabilitation. So something to look forward to in Uganda.
Still in Uganda, the New Vision University staff in 61 billion Ugandan shillings pay rise. This has to do with the government moves to harmonize salaries in the public institutions.
Okay. And they're also marking Martyrs' Day. There's a singing contest launched with regard to that celebration, the Martyrs' Day in Uganda. Those are the stories making headlines in Uganda. Kule Bongo, mikopo kausha damu bungeni. Oh, mikopo kausha damu. You know, you have to say it correct. Oh, yes. Otherwise it will mean something different. Mikopo kausha damu bungeni. Wabunge wachacharuka wakitaka ikomeshwe haraka, inadhalilisha na kuwaumiza watu. Spika Tulia awabana Mwigulu Nape wakiwapa maelezo maalumu kwenye watoa ahadi. They're just talking about Shylocks. Yeah. And the way the interest is high and the kind of methods they use to actually ensure that people pay back. Mikopo kausha damu.
Right, so before we head into the Citizen, Butters, the sugar has come back to, on the front page of this paper, they say bajeti ya kilimo na mwarobaini tatizo la sukari. Some weeks back, this was on the front page of this, on Tanzanian dailies, the lack of sugar in the country.
Oh, shortage of sugar.
The shortage of sugar, rather. Okay. Yes, saying how they're trying to sort out that.
All right. And finally on the Citizen, if we could have that.
Right, I'll have to scroll.
Okay, on the Citizen,
back.
Government in fresh move to curb sugar price spike, the same sugar shortage you were talking about. Matters Agriculture, featuring on the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania, because they also talk about why cashew harvest has soared 61%. Today, the Citizen focusing more on agriculture.
Oh, yes.
Yes. A quick look at the traffic situation. I know it's been raining, and so many people are concerned about will we be able to get into town today or not. So far, so good. Nothing much. Even Thika Road, which has been on the news in recent past, is so far so good. Let's go up as far back as Kenyatta University, and you can see that section of the road is clear. It is green this time of the day, so nothing much to report along Thika Road. You can see a bit of a slowdown once you get to Kasarani, that area, but nothing really to worry about. Thika Road all the way up to the Muthaiga Square and Pangani interchange, it's good, and into town, it is Nyue. So far, don't worry if you're using Thika Road this morning. Kiambu Road is also looking good, all the way from Ndigwa, past the bypass, Ridgeways, all the way past DCI into the Muthaiga interchange and Pangani, nothing to report about. Let's take a look at the Wayaki way into town, and as far back as Kino, nothing, everything is good. Bits of slowdown here and there at Kabete, probably Matatu speaking passengers, but after that it's smooth all the way into town. It's a nice Friday so far, despite the rains. Let's cross to the other side of town and take a look at Mombasa Road. Mombasa Road also from Gateway Mall, it is good. A bit of a slowdown there around Gateway Mall, but after that it's green all the way. Even that section at Imara Daima, which we saw, there was a bit of closure. The road had been closed down yesterday because of some flooding around this area, but you can see it's green right now. So heading into town this direction, it is good. Past Capital Center and past the Nyayo Stadium area, it is good into town. It's actually a very strong green. Langata Road too, looking good. And we have... I'm missing this. Tumeka hii kitu namna gani? Yes, this is Langata Road. And past Galeria Mall, okay, past Uhuru Gardens and Langata, looking very nice and green. Even that area around the T Mall. Yes, just a bit of a... And I'm not sure what is happening here at Wilson Airport as you head outside, away from town. That has been a constant thread this past week. Mbagathi Way also looking green at this time of day. So far, so good. The other road is Ngong Road, and as far back as the Southern Bypass, past Lenana School, past the Junction Mall, all the way past Prestige Plaza onto City Mortuary Roundabout, it is looking good as well. Let's take a look at Jogoo Road. And Jogoo Road, yes, a bit slow this morning. This is Jogoo Road, all the way from Outer Ring interchange at Donholm. It's a bit slow. You can see the sections where you have yellow, a bit of red at Makadara, Niambotela. After that, it's, well, not so bad for a Friday morning. City Stadium roundabout as expected, a bit of a slowdown there because of the roundabout. And yes, Landis Road, past Mudhurwa, past Gikomba, past the Machakos bus terminus. Yes, that area a bit slow this morning, but it's because many people are trying to get into town at this time. So far, so good. And those are the main roads, main tributaries into town. And you can see, it's looking good. So yes, come on and get town as we are leo. As far as traffic is concerned, as at what time is it?
20 minutes past the top of the hour.
6 is looking good.
Let's take a look at how the weather is looking like. We'll start with Mombasa and show you how precipitation 0%. That means chances of it raining today are quite very dim. So as of now, the highest temperatures you'd be getting for today would be as high as 33
so no rains today.
Celsius. In Mombasa, chances of it raining is quite probably very low.
I hope you have Nairobi.
I do have Nairobi. So that is how it extends, getting into the chilly for today.
Mombasa, yes.
In Nairobi, let's see how things are looking like. Average rainfall for today, precipitation of 60%. As you can see, humidity 97% on the same. For today, getting some average rainfall into the day, and then now getting into the midday. As of 10 a.m., thunderstorms all the way. It's expected to increase as of the noon by 70% in various parts of Nairobi and its metropolitan. That is Kiambu, Kajiado, the Kajiado North, parts of Kitengela, as well as the River, and Papu Kiambu as well.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So what baby umbrella?
What baby umbrella.
Okay.
That is how the weather is looking like. On the same, a quick update also on our diary for today. President William Ruto is expected to issue a State of the Nation address at 1 p.m. This, among others, well, he's expected to talk about, among others, the government's preparedness when it comes to the adverse effects on the ongoing rainfall.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yesterday there was a cabinet meeting, the second one this week, and so I'm sure the president will be updating the nation on what's going to happen next.
Oh, yes.
Right, let's now take a look at the dailies, a quick one, even as we invite our colleague Bansi Kimuyu onto the set to tell us what to expect later.
Ni weekend imefika.
Tunakwenda kujirusha. Right, and of course the big news across most of the dailies has to do with the change in the military leadership and the face of the new Chief of Defense Forces, Charles Kahariri, making it to most of the front pages. Yes, on the Daily Nation, it is change of guard. It's a big headline. Kenya Navy also gets a new commander in President Ruto's third military changes. Lieutenant General John Omenda becomes Vice Chief of Defense Forces. Lieutenant General David Sarus, Commander Kenya Army. Major General Fatuma Ahmed, Commander Kenya Air Force. And Major General Paul Otieno, Commander Kenya Navy. And that's how the military leadership stands as at this date of 2024. And the highlights, of course, on the front page, abandoned. That's a question they're asking. While Linturi is a man under siege. Yesterday, the National Assembly voted to impeach him in a motion seeking his ouster as Agriculture CS sails through. The other big headline, and this is about the weather, coastal region likely to be hit by tropical storm. There's been a lot of talk about the cyclone, tropical cyclone Hidaya.
Yeah.
It was expected to hit the East African coast sometime this past night, probably mostly in Tanzania. And effects of the same were to be felt in Kenya. We are yet to get any update from that. They say the coastal region is likely to be hit by a tropical storm, resulting in heavy rainfall. But as you've said, in Mombasa, we don't expect any rain today. So we're still not sure how that Hidaya storm will affect Kenya.
But definitely it might really be affecting Dar es Salaam heading into Tanzania as well.
The coast of Tanzania will definitely
be affected on the same.
On the back page of the Daily Nation, major clash looming over county funds. That's a big headline there. Because of time, let's move on to the Standard.
On to the Standard, it's a light paper today, but then they say Ruto plays by the rules in KDF changes, more than 14 days after the misfortune struck, ending the life of General Francis Ogola in a helicopter crash. Kenya now has a new Chief of Defense Forces. General Charles Kahariri, and a host of other new military bosses, including the first ever female service commander in the Defense Forces history. That is Major General Fatuma Ahmed, was the new Kenya Air Force commander. But other stories, now because this is the big story on all dailies, humanitarian crisis looms. That's on the very bottom scroll, saying as homes marooned and roads cut off. And inside there they have a photo of a road that is on the brink of being road actually collapsing there. Other highlights, the very top scroll, DRC gold puzzle as Interpol joins KQ staff arrest probe. And they say that days after Kenya Airways suspended flights to Kinshasa to protest the detention of its employees, a Foreign Affairs Ministry team has been dispatched to the DRC capital. Much as Linturi will be following up on that for you, this even as 11 members of a select house team have been selected after the full sitting of Parliament voted in favor of a motion to impeach Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi. On the back page, it has something to do with sports. And Felkrug outshines Mbappe to hand Dortmund advantage. Say Borussia Dortmund take slender first leg lead in Champions League semi-finals. It was fireworks yesterday in this game.
All right.
Oh yes, that is the Standard. We'll be getting to see how the pulse is with Bansi in a few.
In matters business this Friday, Kenya taps Israeli loan for upgrade of air defense. This coming exactly 14 days after that fateful tragedy where a chopper went down, killing 10 people, including the Chief of Defense Forces. Israeli firm to supply high-tech anti-missile system. Upgrade comes amid heightened security concerns. So the loan is about a 1 billion shilling loan from Tel Aviv. And, military preparedness is very interesting. You know, Israel is actually at war, but they're able to give us money. A country that's peaceful. But Kenya is acquiring a high-tech missile defense system from Israel using a 1 billion shilling loan from Tel Aviv. That's a big headline on the front page of the Business Daily.
Right. Let's take a look at Taifa Leo and see what is there. Linturi apata waziri wa kilimo amekashifiwa vikali kutokana na uzaji wa mbolea feki kwa wakulima waliotaka fertilizer ya ruzuku. Kindiki akiibuka bingwa tena kwa kuzoa alama B au B kwa mujibu wa Tifa Research. Ni baadhi ya vidokezo kwenye gazeti hili. Tuangazie vidokezo ambavyo hatujaangazia mno. Bunge la Amerika la alika Ruto, kwingineko pigo la Solai na Mai Mahiu kwa familia. Pale juu, kura ya UDA kurudiwa maeneo 528. Hii ni baada ya uchaguzi wa awali kukumbwa na changamoto mbalimbali. This is going to be interesting to see how different things are going to be, even for them. It was a whole litmus test, but just seeing how things are going to be on the same. We can take a look at, we get into the cartoons?
Yes, let's go straight to the cartoons so that Bansi can join us for the day's highlights and tell us what exactly to expect on this Feel Good Friday, even as we mark a World Press Freedom Day. The cartoon on page 14 of the Standard focuses on that impeachment motion against the Agriculture CS. They portray him inside boiling water inside a sufuria on a very hot jiko. And he says, "Sitoki na stoki." It reminds me of another cabinet minister a few years back who said, "I'd rather die than resign."
Resign, yes.
Yeah, so that's the cartoon on page 14 of the Standard. The cartoon on page 18 of the Daily Nation focuses on the World Press Freedom Day, which we are marking today. Yes, everyone pointing a finger at the press.
And actually pressing them.
Yes, they're pressing them. World Press Day. So yes, Bansi Kimugi, good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning.
The weekend queue.
Good morning.
Oh, yes.
And how hot is my coffee?
How hot?
I've come with my coffee, literally. Because this Nairobi cold is not about to demolish me.
Kwenye kuna stima?
Yes. Ilirudi, I think kama nimelala. Asubuhi nimeipata.
At least.
Kina Stanley, imerudi?
Oh yes, at around I think 1:30
Quite a number of people are still complaining there are no lights.
Do you have lights?
Where I came from, there was power.
All right.
Yes.
I think it's been a beautiful week for the entertainment industry. And just taking a look at the pearls, the front page, we have just a beautiful lady. And on the second page, now Smirnoff had a Battle of the Beats that had been happening for, I think they launched it sometime last year, around October, if I'm not wrong, where DJs were competing. And finally, they have crowned, as I can see, the Battle of the Beats, the latest edition of the DJ competition. Battle of the Beats kicked off in September last year. Last weekend, all eyes were on the Rift region, where KJ, the DJ, was crowned the winner. So amazing.
We have a fresh new crop of DJs.
Yes, absolutely.
Battle of that competition.
And he's called KJ.
The kind of DJs Fred used to have back in the day. Okay, DJ Pinye.
Hey, don't talk about DJ Pinye.
He's those ones.
I know.
How many competitions you hold, you can never get to that level.
The old school kind of DJs who
and I think,
can never get to that.
Speaking of DJ Pinye, he's been featured in Vijana Barubaru's new song.
Ooh, okay.
And he's there. He's part of the video.
Vijana Barubaru. Wanaenda kumtafuta DJ Pinye.
Elewa kwanza.
Oh, yes.
And
even as you continue, a whole very interesting bit that I got even for this, that is on the Pulse, page 5 of the Pulse, wearing and just styling during this rainy season. I was seeing even on social media saying, teaches you ways how to, even for the whole Gen Z, teaches you ways how to dress when it comes to this, rainy season. But I'm seeing you've dressed to the rainy season.
Yes.
Probably our viewers will get to see this later.
The full look.
Good Friday, do stand by for that, for the full look. Because I think the shoes really matter, especially in the flooding situation, what kind of shoes you wear. Heels won't do. Heels won't do. Even if you're driving, anything could happen, and then you find yourself
boots,
in a very
your pair of gumboots. Unajua ushaipata nalo watu wamevaa gumboots, like they walk in the mud and in the water, like they own that runway.
Yes.
Business idea. We should actually have fancy gumboots during this time, because
styling it. Vans, gumboots by Vans or something like that.
Okay, so as we take a break, what should we look forward to later on the show?
Of course, a lot of trends have been happening. Tanasha Donna recently revealed that she has lip fillers.
Oh, yes.
And Willie Paul has a brand new album called Gifted. She has not featured any Kenyan artist on the album. We'll be telling you why.
All right. So do stand by for that and a lot more. Remember, we're marking a World Press Freedom Day. We'll be having that conversation at around 7. Before that, the news review. We'll be having Josephat Lowoi Lodea, Director Minorities and Marginalized Affairs Unit at the Executive Office of the President for that bit just after the break. So do stand by for that. And of course, you can be part of this conversation throughout the show through social media on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Heinous crimes ever committed in Kenya that sent the country into shock.
In my forensic life, I've never come across such incidents around.
She told me that there was a friend who was leaving the country. They are going to have an early dinner.
I found texts indicating that time was running out. The intention was to ensure that there was no trace of this girl.
Watch how it all unfolds on Crimes Untold. Coming soon.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy, who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Explore Africa's inspiring legends. Stories of courage, resilience, and the indomitable African spirit.
I think as far as Africa is concerned, music cannot be for enjoyment. Music has to be for
na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. Time for us to take a look at the dailies, and to help us with this morning, we're privileged to have Josephat Lowoi Lodea. Bwana Lodea is a Director, Minorities and Marginalized Affairs Unit at the Executive Office of the President. It's a pleasure to have you in studio. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Yes, very interesting headlines, and it's rare that we get to see the faces of military and the top military brass on the front pages. Today we have the face of the new Chief of Defense Forces, General Charles Kahariri, and all the service commanders there on the front page of the Daily Nation. Lieutenant General John Omenda, who's now the Vice CDF. Lieutenant General David Tarus, who's Commander Kenya Army. Major General Fatuma Ahmed, Commander Kenya Air Force. And Major General Paul Otieno, Commander Kenya Navy. So much has been said about military tradition and how people get to become Chief of Defense Forces. Now we see the President has played by the rules and followed what was proposed by retired General Tonje, Daudi Tonje, in the now famous Tonje rules. But perhaps most interesting is the fact that for the very first time we have a woman service commander. And I'd like you to comment on that even as we move on from that. There's not much to be said about this military process either way.
Thank you very much, Fred. First, let me congratulate the servicemen who have been elevated to these high positions in this country, and mostly General Kahariri for now taking over from the late Ogola. More so on Major General Fatuma Ahmed, who now sits as the first woman to ever been elevated to that position to command a service, the Air Force. This tells us a lot about the current leadership and the belief in women. And not only that, it's also the turn of events that now, even now, women are equal to the task. Because if she was not that smart or good for the job, she would have not been elevated to that level. That means she's worked for it and she has been recognized. So this is the way to go, because finally, at least they have worked their hard way up to the top, where many women have never been. And this is a motivation to our young ladies and those who are in service, that they can rise someday. We are going to see a CDF who's a lady.
Okay.
And that is encouraging, Fred.
And it also says a lot about the president's move not to stoke any controversy when it comes to military leadership. He had indicated that he has a leeway to appoint anyone to even the position of CDF, but we see him sticking by the Tonje rules. That in itself says a lot.
Yes, Fred, the president said that he has the leeway, but more so he said he respects the military because it is an institution that abides by the rules. It's a disciplined institution, and it's an institution that we are all looking into. So going to distort their rules and the way they have been growing is causing discomfort among us, the servicemen. So following the rules, and once you're given the name by themselves and the person satisfies all the requirements of being appointed to any position, then the president, in his own wisdom, has to follow what he has been given, so long as they meet the minimum requirements and also the qualifications.
Okay. And the other big story, of course, today, and which has been the biggest talking point since yesterday afternoon, is this motion seeking the oust of Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi, which sailed through the National Assembly yesterday. And many would have expected that the Kenya Kwanza administration would have lobbied its members in the National Assembly to try and save the cabinet secretary. In fact, if I may quote one source here, who's been quoted by the Daily Nation, saying that the Kenya Kwanza leadership would not have allowed the motion to get to the floor of the House had it been serious about saving Mr. Linturi. Now we're seeing Mr. Linturi inching even closer to becoming the very first CS to be impeached under this new constitutional dispensation. The president, many people have been asking the president to at least fire one or two members of his cabinet. He has been reluctant to do so. But many are saying that this is actually, they see the president's hand in probably failing to lobby for his acquittal in the National Assembly.
Thank you very much, Fred. The first thing we should respect that Kenya, as it is today, the three arms of government work independently, as much as sometimes they consult each other. Parliament has their own roles, and they play by their own ball. The issue of Linturi's impeachment is in Parliament. It is not in the executive. And the president has little to even try to save Linturi. If Linturi is innocent, then the 11-member committee formed after investigations are going to set him free. But if he is found culpable of the fake fertilizer issues, then he'll be sent packing.
I was saying the president would not be interested in trying to save a member of his own cabinet. This is his own appointee.
The president's clarion call is fight corruption. And if he is a friend to him, and he declared this to all of us who are working under him, even if you are a friend and you're indulging in activities that cost the country, then he cannot save you. Mm-hmm. So it is, there's no two way about it. It's about corruption, and the president is very clear on the same.
And something else is about the operations of Parliament. A lot has been said about the balance of numbers, the tyranny of numbers, if we may call it that. We saw the leader of majority opposing this motion for the ouster of Linturi, yet most of the members from the Kenya Kwanza side did not vote that way. This is the first time we're seeing this kind of departure. We've seen that once the leader of majority decides this is the way to go, everyone else from the Kenya Kwanza side falls in line.
That's what I'm telling you. The parliament is an independent body, and members are somehow independent in their thinking. Because if members of that Committee of Agriculture and the motion mover are found out reasons why Linturi should be sent packing, they'll convince the other members as opposed to the majority leader, because the majority leader, yes, mobs the majority. But if the majority feel that the majority's leader position is not their position, they'll take their position. And that is why the members of the Kenya Kwanza, most of them are from the agricultural areas where they grow food. They have also that push from their people, that why did you allow fake fertilizer to reach us? So they have a mandate to work for their people first before listening and obeying any other person in their house or outside.
And now the issue moves to the 11-member committee that was appointed yesterday, and many people are still a bit skeptical about these processes of parliament. Once a house decides to move a certain way, then you subject the same to a committee of 11 people. Do you have hope that this committee will do a thorough job?
Yes, I have hope, because the 11-member committee was elected by the, will be nominated by the House Business Committee, and they'll nominate members, especially those who have signed the motion, not from those who have not. And the 11-member committee are going to do a thorough job because the country is watching. Agriculture is the backbone of this country. Everybody will be following. You people will be digging deeper, and they have to be smart and make sure that the outcome, if Linturi is innocent, he should be set free. If they find him culpable, then they should recommend to the House for further action, because they are not final. They have to bring the report back to the House, and the House can decide to go against their report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, the other big piece of news has to do with the flooding situation in the country. I can see at least the Daily Nation was not able to get any space on the front page for this, apart from that highlight on the coastal region likely to be hit by a tropical storm. But on the front page of the Standard, we have bits and pieces of news on the same. Humanitarian crisis looms as homes marooned and roads cut off. Yesterday, there was a cabinet meeting, the second one this week, to discuss the flood situation in the country and ways to mitigate the same. On the front page of the Standard, they talk about cabinet saying schools must open on Monday. We saw what happened last week, at the beginning of this week, actually, very late Sunday night, getting very late communication from the Ministry of Education on the postponement of the reopening date. Now, Cabinet pronouncing itself on this matter and saying that the schools will definitely open on Monday. It is still a very fluid situation. No one knows exactly what will happen. Is this the kind of communication we expect from government at a time when no one knows exactly what will happen in the next few days?
Cabinet is the highest decision-making organ in this country. And when they met and said school have to open, not all schools are affected, and not all regions are affected in that case. So they might take case to case. Those schools that are not affected and the areas that are not affected are going just to open as directed. Those few areas that are affected where people are living in schools, because that is also the fear. The schools might be okay, but people from the surrounding are affected by floods and they are moved to schools. Maybe those schools will delay to be opened. But the general information is that schools are going to be reopened on the 6th, and that is the stand of the government as of today. Unless things change, that will remain the position, and parents should prepare to make sure that their kids reach school safely.
And finally, on that issue, the president is expected to address the nation later this afternoon at around 12:30, thereabout. And there's a lot of expectation. There's been calls for him to declare this flood situation a national disaster so that it becomes easier to bring all stakeholders together to try and contain the situation. Is that the expectation you have, or do you think the president will be addressing other issues?
The president will be addressing national issues, all related to the current flood situation and any other thing that is important to this country. I don't want to guess what the president will say because he's the president, but I know he'll address all the raft of issues that are affecting this country, and more so the floods that are affecting all our people all across the country. And that is a major issue now, that everybody is looking into what is the direction of the president.
All right. And that wraps up our news review this morning. Just a quick look at the dailies. There are the headlines kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa Leo. Wanazungumzia Linturi apata anasema ni utepetevu. Waziri wa kilimo amekashifiwa vikali kutokana na uuzaji wa mbolea feki kwa wakulima waliotaka fertilizer ya ruzuku. Kindiki akiibuka bingwa tena kwa kuzoa alama B kwa mujibu wa Tifa Research. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti hili. Linturi jana haikuwa siku nzuri kwake. On the front page of the People Daily, why Ruto settled on Kahariri, still focus on the changes in the military leadership. Also, Linturi makes it to the front page of the People Daily. On the Star, Biden elevates Ruto in Africa Charm offensive. A lot of expectations with that expected travel to the United States of America by President William Ruto later this month. And also matters to do with the military. Yes, so those are the dailies this morning. And now that we have Joseph Lodea in studio with us, we cannot allow you just to leave without talking about the office that you lead. Bwana Lodea is a Director, Minorities and Marginalized Affairs Unit at the Executive Office of the President. Now, what exactly does this office deal with? And when you talk about minorities and marginalized populations, that definition sometimes eludes a lot of Kenyans. Kindly clarify it for us.
Thank you very much. The minorities and the marginalized communities in Kenya are known to be here, but everybody has been running away. So I'm heading an office appointed by the President, an office that deals with issues, affairs actually, of the minority and the marginalized. And I want to rephrase it as we have minority who are marginalized, or the marginalized minorities. Mm-hmm. We have people who are smaller in number, and their economic power also is below.
You're talking about ethnic communities?
Yes, ethnic communities, no groups, because if I open it to groups, then it will be other issues. The ethnic minorities all across Kenya, we have, they are spread almost to all counties. But the bigger pockets are found in more than 30 counties. Their population runs to almost 4 million, 5 million Kenyans, because we are still mapping them out. These are the people that they are marginalized, as said, and they are minority. They are smaller in number. They cannot get a representative, or they cannot be in the governance. So they need some sort of affirmative action. Article 56 of the Constitution mandates the government to identify such communities, the ethnic communities, and come up with an affirmative action that will bring them on par with the other
examples of such communities?
We have the Pemba, we have the El Chamus, we have the Agiek. We have 59 communities in this country. Some are stateless, like you saw the story of the Pemba, the story of the Shona, story of the Nubis, who are in this country. They have been here pre-independence. They have not been allowed to be in the list of Kenyans. So all these people, first, we want to identify them, recognize them, protect their rights, and mainstream them, bring them into the government activities, give them documentation, because you cannot do anything in this country if you don't have identification documents.
And just to clarify, because you talked about marginalized minorities, are we saying that there are minorities that are not necessarily marginalized? And if at all you could draw a connection between marginalization and the minorities, what exactly is it?
Yeah, that's okay. That is an issue that we are working on. Today we have minorities, because when we say minorities, we are talking about smaller numbers. We have Kenyans who are Indians. They have a smaller number in Kenya in the total population, but they are not marginalized. And marginalization means they are at least somehow they can feed themselves, take their kids to school, they have land, and they don't really need any affirmative action apart from the leadership maybe and governance part. Then we have the minorities who are living in the poor state, those who have not been recognized. Those are smaller in some counties that they cannot even elect a representative, even an MCA from their area. So those are the ones we call marginalized. They live in those marginal areas, some of them. Most of these minorities are living in the border of Kenya and the other countries, like the Dasnach, the Pare. just because a bigger population of that tribe lives on the other side of the country, they are not recognized, those living in our side. So they are not recognized either in Tanzania or in Ethiopia. And they are recognized in Ethiopia, in Tanzania, but not those living in Kenya are not recognized in this other side. So we want to really take census of them, know who are those who are the real Kenyans. Then they're identified on this side as a tribe and given their recognition and their culture protected.
Okay, and we've seen, because you mentioned the Shona and such like groupings, where probably some of the interventions that the government has come up with is recognizing these groupings as Kenyans and giving them national identity cards. This past week, or I think towards the end of last week, we saw the dissolution of vetting committees for the issuance of ID cards. And I don't know if this is this one of the interventions that the government is working on?
Yes, this is the first intervention that the government is working on, because vetting affected mostly these minorities, because you're vetted in your own country to be given an identity card, and it costs a lot of people. You find a 48, a 45-year-old Kenyan without documentation just because he or she never passed the so-called vetting. And now that is the first move, and that's an achievement of this office, that the president now has decided that the stories about vetting Kenyans to get a Kenyan identification are put aside. Kenyan is a Kenyan. So long as your village elder can identify you, your neighbors know you, then you're allowed to have the documentation and be registered as a Kenyan and participate in the Kenyan activities.
And away from the national identification documents, what else, what other measures is the government putting in place?
The affirmative action, because some of these people, communities don't have even schools near them. So grading them the same like the others will really continue disadvantaging them. So we have affirmative action on education, affirmative action on employment. Today, as we speak, in the Kenyan National Employment Portal, we have only 56 communities. But the Kenyan Bureau of Statistics enlists up to 120 communities in Kenya. So the others are out. If you are tribe A and you're not in the employment portal, then you cannot be employed. So we need also to elevate and make sure that they are also employed like any other Kenyan. There is a community called Munyoyaya that had even no one in the employment of this country. But recently, because of these interventions, during the KWS employment, 3 or 4 of them were taken. So those are the interventions, bringing everybody on board and making sure that we all develop and we all build the economy of this country. Because if you leave almost half of Kenyans out of building the economy of this country, then we are dragging our country back.
Okay. Josfant Lowoi Lodea, Director, Minorities and Marginalized Affairs Unit at the Executive Office of the President. Thank you so much for your time at TV47, helping us look at the headlines and clarifying on matters minorities and marginalized populations in this nation. Do stand by for the conversation on World Press Freedom Day coming after the break. Yes, today as journalists we mark a very special day, and we'll be discussing that with a panel. I'll be introducing them after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. Don't go too far.
Nadhani mwenyewe hali halisi umeiona tulivyotoka kwenye kikao.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue. Mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Join us on a journey through the concrete jungles and rising skylines, where every beam, every nail tells a story of progress and vision.
In every aspect of life, you have to look at several dynamics.
From groundbreaking,
nowadays with the tech, you can check on different websites or you check online and you can see some inspiration. So at least that one would be a direction already. I'll know like what kind of style you're going for.
To finishing touches, witness the dedication of the hard-working teams who bring these ambitious dreams to reality. The Realtor, Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue. Mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Join us on a journey through the concrete jungles and rising skylines, where every beam, every nail tells a story of progress and vision.
In every aspect of life, you have to look at several dynamics.
From groundbreaking,
nowadays with the tech, you can check on different websites or you check online and you can see some inspiration. So at least that one would be a direction already. I'll know like what kind of style you're going for.
To finishing touches, witness the dedication of the hard-working teams who bring these ambitious dreams to reality. The Realtor, Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue. Mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. Today is World Press Freedom Day. And joining us, journalists of note or individuals in the media and in the media industry here in Kenya, who are going to help us with this discussion to understand what exactly we are celebrating as journalists as a media fraternity. Allow me to introduce them. From my immediate right, Ken Bosire from the Kenya Editors Guild, a journalist also. You've served in quite a number of media houses. It is a pleasure to have you at TV47 this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Next to Bwana Bosire, we have Professor Nancy Buka, a media scholar. It is a pleasure to have a media scholar at TV47 as we celebrate World Press Freedom Day.
Thank you for having me.
And last but definitely not least, Maina Mwirori, immediate former chairman, Media Council of Kenya. It is good to have you in studio.
Thank you.
Now, if you look at the Daily Nation cartoon on page 18 this morning, it just has a title, World Press Freedom Day, and a caricature of journalists doing what they do best, collecting news. But we do have fingers that are not just pointing them or pointing at them, they're actually pressing them. And one wonders what the name press means in this instance. And probably let's start from there. Press, up to this day and age, still is a word used to describe a journalist. In the day, now we are in the multimedia and social media and artificial intelligence phase, and we're still calling ourselves press. Why is this, Bwana Maina?
There are some words which will never go away, traditionally, because they are entrenched. When you talk of press, it was the first medium. That's why it became press, the printing press. However, today now, it denotes everything: television, digital, electronic media, but it will always be the press, freedom of the press. But we know what it encompasses.
Okay.
It will never go away, and it's easier to put on a headline because it's short. Media now is wider than what we knew as media. It's already outside the boundaries. But when you talk of press, it implies the news media, basically like what you do when you are seated here. So the word will never go away, and it allows creativity, as you can see in that cartoon. It can even have two meanings. You are being pressed, and you are the press. It's a very clever cartoon.
Yes, so that's a cartoon on page 18 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 14 of The Standard, we have an editorial comment talking about media freedom as a right. And they say that media freedom is a right, not state-given privilege. Professor Buka, one wonders why the media fraternity feels like we are constantly under threat. Many people look at the media and they see these are very strong, powerful people. But anyone in the media is always complaining about being pressed, being oppressed, being denied this or the other, being in a very constricted environment. Why is that?
It comes with the territory. You know, when you are responsible for news and information, you know, for the public, or disseminating that to the public and sharing it, then you know, it doesn't come without the attendant risks. And you know, when you're holding the political class or the leaders accountable, you know, then you're likely to receive the sort of attention that that media gets. And I keep saying that, you know, the day that we will be praised as media for doing a good job by the political elite and those that are in positions of authority, then there'll be question marks. We have a larger obligation to serve public interest, to provide them with news and information, to ask the questions that nobody wants to ask, and to be able to hold not just the ruling elite, but also, you know, the public for leadership. The pressure is even more because they're doing that on behalf of the people and for the people, and somebody needs to be able to check on that, and that's where the role of the media comes in. So it's okay to be in the situation that we're in, where you know, not everybody in society is going to be happy with what the media is doing, but if it is serving the public good for the greater number of people, then we continue doing what we're doing.
Okay. And Bosire, you've worked in quite a number of newsrooms, and you're a newsroom leader in your own right, and now serving with the Kenya Editors Guild. And as the professor talks about attendant risks, many people may wonder. Many people believe it's a very glamorous job, but there are risks involved. What kind of risks are there? Probably in the Kenyan setup.
Yes, I think it's important to note that the position we hold in society, where we provide information, not just information, but we also educate people, ask the questions, hold everybody to account. Those risks are inherent. When you ask questions, some people are going to be uncomfortable. There is what we call physical safety. Mm-hmm. People are going to threaten you for exposing what they are not doing right. There are other things that are now come. Being in the front line, especially at a time like this, when in crisis, like the flooding that has, the guys are out there, there are physical threats. Some of them are traumatized, they witness all manner of things. So there are three very wide areas of what we think is a risk. The pressure on the physical world, because you've asked the uncomfortable questions. Today we are increasingly looking at what is the mental state, the psychosocial state of the person you send out. We send them to very areas where they witness very bad things, and yet they come back, and we don't step back to find out how they are processing them. There's a new thread that has come also that is called the cyber security. People are trolled, people are harassed online, all those things have come in. There is another thread that I think adaptation, embracing and adapting to new and changing environments. Constantly, job security is a big problem right now. People are going out without pay for long periods and are very, very, very stressful positions. So those are from physical, psychosocial, and even the welfare itself within the newsrooms. That has changed a great deal now.
And just going by this commentary, the editorial on the Standard, and the first accusation against those who seek to stifle the freedom of the media goes probably to the authorities most of the times. But I've seen a trend that even the general public could also be accused of stifling media freedom to an extent. Case in point, my colleague journalist Larry Mado this past week has come under sharp criticism in social media. He's simply going around and reporting for his media house about the flooding situation in the country and some of the issues, including what's happening at the JKIA. But a lot of the criticism directed his way is that he's not patriotic, is that he's telling people bad stories about the country. That in itself is a risk for someone who's just doing their job, Bwana Mwiruri.
Media freedom, first I'll say it's the day celebrated yesterday is entrenched at the United Nations. That tells you how seriously it's taken by the global community, media freedom. Why is it taken so seriously? Because the threats are so many. Who do you threaten most of the time as the media? Who feels the threat? It's usually not the opposition, because the media, since it's historical upcoming, you know, media is called the fourth estate. It started during the French Revolution. It was like the opposition that has no name, but it became the fourth estate because it stands with the opposite, it's opposite of the government. So your most immediate enemy is usually the authority, because media speaks to power. When you see power going wrong, you speak, you write. When you see the floods, you don't just report the floods, you report the negligence, the lack of drainage. You are telling power, and they'll not be happy. Now, in media, we usually say is the growth of media is directly proportional to growth of democracy. The more democratic a country is, the fewer the threats. Where media is oppressed most by the government, you will find now even wananchi also starting to take on media. And now, as my colleague Ken had said earlier, cyberbullying has become one of the biggest tools against the media now, because you are being attacked by anonymous people who have a lot of freedom to attack you. That's what has been happening to our colleague in CNN. I can tell you he's speaking the truth. But there is a kind of shame that comes when the truth is being exposed to the whole world. At Mai Mahiu, he stayed there for 2 days reporting what's happening in Mai Mahiu and showing this has been a time bomb waiting to happen. And finally it happened. So he's attacked both by the government, he's telling, and sometimes by the authorities on the ground near where that is happening. It's an existential threat that will not go away soon. And just to mention, this year, Kenya has gone back. 2023, we were rated below 100 in media freedom. Now, yesterday I saw we've moved back. We are in 160 something, telling you things are not getting better.
Despite the change in constitution, we should be enjoying relatively much better environment as a media. What went wrong? The laws protect freedom of speech and all this. What exactly is it? Where exactly is a disconnect?
You could attribute that to a number of factors, but I think before I get to that, I would just like to say that there is no deeper sense of patriotism than when you are asking the questions that everybody should be asking, or the questions on everybody's mind. And so we shouldn't look at some of the work that is being done by the likes of Larry Madowo as not being patriotic. I think the work that our media colleagues do speak to the deeper sense of patriotism that they have. Now, to the question around, what went wrong, I think there are several factors, that can be taken into account. I think there is a deeper sense of responsibility on media, and there are instances where perhaps we may have not done what we needed to do, where we have been unethical sometimes in the work that we're doing. And I know that because I served in the Media Complaints Commission until late last year. And so when people ask where is the media, we've seen that around, for example, the reportage of elections. And that's where sometimes it starts, and the trust then starts to fade away. But it's interesting that from the State of the Media report that was launched yesterday, there is still quite some significant trust in the media. So one, it is when the public perceives us as not asking the questions that we need to ask, then that trust fades. And so, we then become susceptible to attacks or criticism or, the sort of cyberbullying that then you see is attended to colleagues. But then the other challenge has got to do with the current realities within the media ecosystem. So when you have journalists or reporters who have not been paid, who don't know when their next paycheck is going to come, when the working conditions are not conducive in the newsroom, for some of the, Ken alluded to some of the risks, some of the risks around the stories that they cover. When you're sending journalists, for example, to cover the floods, what safety and protection measures have you put in place as a media house to guarantee their own security as they report, on what's happening in our society? So as frontline ambassadors, and I see journalists as frontline ambassadors because whenever there is anything that's happening, they're at the forefront of bringing that news and information to us. Have we, as media, introspected on how we are taking care of each other and how we are treating, our colleagues, even as they report that? So it creates a lot of despair. It also creates an environment that is not conducive for journalists to thrive. And so there are many who exit the newsroom, not because they're not passionate about what they're doing, but just because the working conditions are untenable. There are questions that, for us in training also need to ask ourselves. To what extent are we preparing, the future journalists or the current journalists to be able to respond to the current realities of what's happening and how the changes as a result of technology and the digital disruption are affecting the way that they do business. So in looking at what went wrong, and then of course looking at the laws that are in place and whether those laws actually guarantee, the freedom of the media, or they actually stifle, that freedom. So it's I think there's no one answer to it. I think it's important that all stakeholders come together and introspect and ask, are we actually, in the work that we do and in the contribution that we're making, are we contributing to media freedom? Are we not?
Are we consequential? And the other question that should be asked probably is, has the professional practice of journalism got it to a point where it's no longer affordable? Probably with the advent of new technology, artificial intelligence, bloggers are thriving, and media houses have reduced revenues. Has it become unaffordable for people to actually practice journalism professionally?
Yeah, thanks. Before I even respond, the story of Larry Madowo, I think, like Professor said, there's no greater attribution to patriotism than what he's doing. Does somebody stop to think that a guy leaves his house, for 3 days is out in the cold, facing all manner of risks? What greater patriotism can you exhibit than that? And I think that is exactly. And the question is, who is throwing these words at him? That's the question we should ask ourselves. And you know, we now said behind, with the emergence of cyberbullying and everything and technology, who is hiding? Who are these faceless people who are driving this thing? We know people can drive agenda. So having said that, it's also important to note that the new landscape may appear as a threat, but it's not. I see opportunities in there. Yeah, that when you're talking about new players coming in, more people want to play in it. More people, we're getting up newer populations. In fact, from the status of the report, the status media report that was released yesterday, we have more players in the industry. We have more journalists who have been enlisted. More journalists have been trained. It's a growth. But how we look at it, it's also how we've been preset. We're using an old template to judge a new kind of stage. And that's where we are in that kind of intersection where we are saying, do we go left or right? But for me, the new, especially technology, is a friend to us. It has allowed more people to broadcast, more people to set up enterprises, media enterprises, given more people access to information, given us new tools of investigation. So I think in the way, who is asking, is it affordable? That is the question. But for me, from where I see it, I think it's an opportunity that we need to take, and begin to innovate more. I think innovation becomes the thing is. For example, the recent pronouncement with the PS that will only take advertising to one media house. That was unfortunate, but then it asks you, is that the only source of revenue that you can have? So the questions like Professor just mentioned, that we need to begin to think at this, framing this thing, when we are looking at the changes, internally and externally, what are we doing to adapt? Adaptation is the key word here. Okay. Because I think there are people today who are making loadfuls of cash, a lot of money from content creation. Do we begin to look at content as the thing that we have to sell to the people? Because people buy content and not just infrastructure.
Okay. And that's a temptation, because you go where the money is. Has media in Kenya been slow to transition to the new ways, that by sticking to the old way of doing it and getting to a level where that style of doing it has become unaffordable, then you find yourself stifling your own workspace?
I would not call it slow. I would say the infrastructure in which we exist may not have allowed us to move as fast as other dispensations where they have more resources. I'll give you an example of New York Times. They have gone completely paperless. They don't have a paper on the street. They are now selling all their content digitally. And I was reading a report, they have made as much money as they used to make when they were selling the newspaper on the street. and that's a big newspaper. In Kenya, we have seen that trend to go in that direction slowly because this paper is dying. This one, I don't know if 10 years down the line you will still go there and get the newspaper from the vendor there. So we have seen a lot of innovation into that direction. The big ones are trying now to go digital. However, the space in which we exist, the economy, the struggles in making ends meet for every media house may stifle that. But that's not to say we've been slow. There is hope, as my colleague Ken is saying. There's a lot of hope. And as he said, we should move away from using the old template to deal with something very new, which is full of disruptions. Me and Ken, when we were employed in the 90s, it was only the newspaper. We did not even have typewriters in the newsroom. And the newspaper came out and sold 90,000 copies
a day.
And that was just a standard, yeah. Nation was in the one something, sometimes 180,000 a day. Newspaper only. Today, everybody is down. Even this survey you saw yesterday, if you count the numbers, you'll be shocked. Even doing your eye survey, when you walk down Moi Avenue, look at the old vendors you used to see there. If you woke up early in the morning at 5, you used to see vendors carrying heavy sacks full of newspaper. These days, the vehicle just goes throwing a few bunches. So we are being pushed out of the old technology, the old template, and being pushed to survive. You must evolve into very innovative ways. That is the only way for the future of these media houses.
And this is a pronouncement by the government on how it is going to conduct its media spend and only direct it's that MyGov pull out to one daily. The kind of reception that we've seen from generally the other media houses that did not get to benefit was a lot of discomfort. And the paper that benefited from this, which is the Star, because it's obvious, and the MyGov is only available on the Star on Tuesdays every week. A lot could be said about how they've had to adjust even their reporting. Let me use this Tuesday, for example. Tuesday came a day after the Mai Mahiu tragedy. And all the dailies talked about, and I have copies, unfortunately we do not have them up, but the Daily Nation went with Black Monday and images of what happened in Mai Mahiu. I think Taifa Leo, Mafuriko ya Mauti, just images of what happened there. And the Standard, Deluge of Death, same thing. The People Daily, floods kill 91, and gory images of what happened there. But now you take a look at what the Star decided to go with that day. On the top, the main headline is Doomed Chopper Propeller Linked to Ogola's Death. That's a big headline. On the bottom, we have an image of ODM bigwigs as a party leader and his 2 deputies. And it was a file picture. It was not even a picture from that day. ODM bigwigs seek to influence grassroots elections. And on the front page, there was no mention of this flooding situation at all. And one wonders, does this kind of government spend affect the media that will become captives of that kind of spending by government, that you could clearly see for a newsroom to decide to go with a totally different kind of headline? There must have been a lot of influence.
I mean, absolutely. When you have, that sort of government spend coming your way, it's going to influence how you report. I think we need to appreciate that the role of media is larger than serving the interests of a particular government or a particular dispensation, and it's questions like what you're asking. It is headlines or reportage like what you're mentioning that then raise questions about the credibility of the media. So whereas the publication might get away with it now because of the government spend that they're attracting, they have a larger obligation, and that is to serve public interest. And so tomorrow, when people do not read it or do not consume it, it's because of the feeling that when it mattered to us the most, you did not cover the issues as we wanted them covered. And I know it's not easy for the editorial leadership in making some of those decisions and trying to find a balance, but appreciating that the reason why we exist as media is because we are serving public interest, and the public should be front and center of a lot of the decisions that we are making. Granted, we know that doesn't happen all the time. There are business interests that then would curtail, the other interests that the media seeks to. That the media seeks to serve, and I think as Maina was talking about, changing the way that we do business and the way that we report and how we package. I think one thing that is consistent is that the principles and the tenets of good journalism, cannot be downplayed. A good story is a good story, whether it is published on a print newspaper or it is put behind a paywall on your, a digital device, or it is, shared on social media platforms. And I think what's critical is for us to realize that whereas the platforms of dissemination have changed, people will still look for news and information, and they want to access it. Okay. So I don't buy the newspaper, I'm able to access it online, but that's not even the first place that I go in the morning. Mm-hmm. I go on X and I want to find out, what are the, what are the trends? What's Nation saying on their X, whatever? What's the Standard saying? What are all these media houses saying on their social media platforms? What are the big stories that I should go after? Or I should read. So the tenets of good journalism will not change. Okay. What has happened is that I think we have tended to look at models that have worked in other jurisdictions and brought them home and imagined that they would work. The State of the Media report, which was launched yesterday, is consistent with a lot of other reports that have been launched or that have been shared. We assume that because the newspaper circulation figures are dwindling, that people do not access news and information. They're accessing that news and information in all manner of platforms. They're accessing it on their WhatsApp platforms, and some of that information, if we are not there where people are as journalists, then they have a lot of misinformation, because in those spaces, people can share whatever information that they want to share, factual or false, as you'd call it. So it's going to the places where we are and then thinking innovatively about how we then, finance the news operations.
Finance is a key issue here. Yes. This business has to be sustained, and one may blame the Star, but they need the money. And the government has been the biggest revenue stream for media houses for so many decades. That model in itself appears to be part of the problem, that when the government decides to pull out, then a lot of media houses are left struggling, and some media houses appear to be giving in and almost falling captive to some of this. Do you think that probably that's where the media missed the point in Kenya's perspective, that depending too much on the government, which is also accused of infringing on the freedom of the media?
Yes, I think what is important, what Professor has just mentioned about plurality of platforms. I don't have to go, I can access information from very many channels because of the digital kind of dividend that we are reaping now. And I think that's one of the things. But most importantly, I just want to mention about how a resource to media is not just money. The resource is money, but also a resource is the personnel. How well equipped, how have you taken care of the people who are going out to do these things? You can get all the money in the world, but you don't deploy it properly so that you're in motivating your staff to go out and look for these stories. But mine and I worked in a newspaper, even you, in an organization that was also controlled by the people who controlled the levers of power. But there's one thing that doesn't change, the practice of journalism. Whether you are working in any place, you must remain true to your calling.
Even without the money?
Even without the money. Sometimes the money, like I've just mentioned, is sometimes not the only determinant. You have something that you stand for. But a fact like the flooding, you can never change it. It's a fact, it was flooding, people died, there was tragedy, there was crisis out of it. I keep telling people, facts can never walk on their heads. They will remain facts, and they will stare back at you. You can imagine if I was the editor, I walked in the newsroom and I don't have this on page 1. My day will be ruined. Do I call myself a journalist that day again? So, responsibility, sensitivity in the way you frame the story does not mean that you ignore the story. In fact, I was just looking at some of the concerns of the media that emerged from the report yesterday. There is an element of disinformation, malinformation. That was top, because people then think that the information we give them, is it right? But there is one thing that came out, lack of diversity. The generic nature in which we cover news. You go from one channel, one newspaper, it's just the same thing. It's because we are stuck to the old model of things. There's been a shift in the way we don't no longer sit in the newsroom and determine what is good for our audience. That has changed. The audience will tell you, this is what I want, this is where I want to consume it, and this is the way it is. There's a closer relationship between the audience and us as journalists. So we have to have a constant conversation about what is working. And that's where now we go through all these things and say, what are people speaking to us? When I go on social media, what are the concerns? Can I put fact? Can I verify it and package it and take the story ahead? So that conversation, the practice of journalism and our business models, they have to find a place where they strike a balance so that we don't take our audience for granted.
Right. Time now for us to take a break. We continue this conversation after the break. Today, being World Press Freedom Day, we continue examining the space of the media in a changing environment. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Promoting insurance awareness with Insurance Regulatory Authority. It is any parent's joy to know that their child's education in future is secured. Education costs are increasingly expensive, while the future is filled with uncertainties. Take an education insurance policy today to assure your child's education in future in case of death or permanent disability. Your education policy remains valid. No further premiums are payable, and your child's education is assured. Read and understand the terms and conditions of your policy. This message is brought to you by IRA.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. We continue with this conversation on World Press Freedom Day, looking at the space that the media occupies in a changing environment. I'm still in studio with Ken Busira from the Kenya Editors Guild, Professor Nancy Buka, who's a media scholar, and Maina Muirore, immediate former chairperson, Media Council of Kenya. And when I'm Muirore, we're just looking at what happened on Tuesday with that headline on the front page of the Star, vis-a-vis what was happening in the country, because this was the main news, and it was not just normal reporting. A tragedy had happened, and every Kenyan's focus was on that. And then they decide to go with something else totally on a day when we know that the government spend is on them with the MyGov pullout or that daily.
Without going into direct, complete reference, because we do not know 100% what happened on the editorial tables, and we have many editorial tables in this town. Everybody decides the way to go, and many things. I've been an editor. I was a managing editor of the People Daily, and many things inform the way an editor will go. I have a lot of experience. Me and Ken Bosira, we've worked together since we were boys.
Would one of those things be money?
Not necessarily. It could be, you see, what you see is what the editor brings out, but you don't know what's behind the editor. The editor is the front of a lot of other influences that affect that media house. First, I'll give you just 2 examples. And there's an old saying that came from Britain, where there was I think he's still there, Murdoch, the owner of some of the biggest titles in Britain. And it was said of him, the freedom of the media belongs to the owner.
Okay.
Look at America. Fox supports one side, CNN, one side. It's global. It's the interests sometimes of the owner or of the funder or of just the editor. The editor may just decide. It cannot be conclusive, but it can be inferred. You can clearly see something happened here, as we are saying of the coverage on page 1 that day. Something happened here. It's a matter of conjecture. Why didn't they go this way? You can only guess. However, I'll tell you, a new trend is emerging, where in the Media Council, I was there with the professor. In the Media Council, we started studying a concept called, you remember this thing we used to talk about, media capture. Media capture by commercial forces. Commercial forces can now have a big leeway in what you will write tomorrow and what you will broadcast. One time when we did that study, there was a big breakdown of bank services, the ATMs. That story never saw the light of day in any of the newspapers. Because if you do it, the particular bank affected is the biggest spender in every media. How come nobody wrote about it? These are the same things we are talking about. Another time, some of the biggest mobile telephony companies, I'm speaking in the plural, have been having a lot of leeway. A day like yesterday, you could see half of fibers were not working. Look at it in the newspapers and show me.
Nowhere.
It's nowhere.
Yes.
There's something now being called commercial capture. It will not end because we are talking finance. Will you carry this story and avoid 100 million? You run it then and pay yourself 100 million. It's an example. I'm not saying it's a fact. So that's why I'm telling you, where an editor sits, so many forces come into play. You may not even blame the editor. But there are many things now influencing editors than what used to influence editors during our time. Those days you could write anything and go home.
Okay.
And we had no mobile phones. You just go home until tomorrow.
And that's the crux of the matter, Professor. Do you agree with that statement that freedom of the press belongs only to the owner?
The freedom of the press actually belongs to the people and not the owner. And mine is being quite gentle, or even in the days when he was in the newsroom, that commercial capture was there. It's just that it was not as overt as we see it today. And two, you also are operating in a context where the audience is quite, you have a very active consumer who's able to see, in between and read in between the lines. This consumer has very many options, so they are able to compare and deduce for themselves what might be, what might be going on. In the days when Maina was in the newsroom, maybe the public didn't have that advantage of being able to compare what different media houses were saying or doing. So that commercial capture has always been there. It's just that I think we see it a lot more overtly now, and that's because of the struggles that are happening within, within the media space. That freedom, going back to the question around where that freedom sits, it actually sits with the people, because media exists to serve the public interest. The public is usually very unforgiving. And as Maina said, that whereas, we are not at the editorial decision-making table, at the end of the day, it's a public perception. When we're looking at the state of the media in this country, we didn't go to ask the editors. There may be questions there that we're looking at, what do editors think? But a lot of it went back to the audience consumer. How do they perceive the media? What platforms are they on? What are the reasons why they're attending to those platforms? So the consumer has a lot to do with, the media perception, has a lot to do with, where attention will go to. There's been a lot around, for example, the work that John Allen Namu did with, the fertile deception. And the sort of traction that got on social media, the number of followers that, Africa Uncensored, for example, now has, is much higher, because society feels that they're asking the questions that concern them, So we may be comfortable right now because, as an organization, as a media house, thinking that, because of these commercial interests, that is where we need to focus on. But I think the greater good is public interest and serving the public, who you will need, to be able to sustain your business. Yeah.
The environment has changed, especially with the growth of technology. And you have served in the newsroom alongside Bwana Mwirure from the 90s, even before the advent of computers and the internet. And now we're seeing that this has really moved, and now we're talking about artificial intelligence. And one wonders how much of a threat this could be when you're looking at press freedom, given the fact that a lot of this data, some of it is generated by machines and without human intervention. Do you see a risk in that?
It's important that what we just, Mine and Prof just spoke about, public interest. That freedom sits with the people. Even the people in authority are answerable to the citizen. And we all have one common person. The people in power, their power stems from the people. As the media, our own people, our audience, our target is that. So that trust. From yesterday's report, I saw it has gone down a little, but people still trust the media. They still trust us to tell them the right thing, to inform, give them the right stuff. So what has happened in this new shift to technology? I see, like I did mention before, that it is an opportunity. It is more is demanded from us as professionals. Technology is a tool. AI is a tool for us to use, because at every intersection there will be a human intervention. It can never be let on its own. It's how we use it. But most importantly, this technology, it calls on us to ensure that we are better trained in terms of how you use it. For example, a lot of data, a lot of what is fed into the AI kind of system is information and software from the global north. Do we have it? Have we domesticated it? Where is our place of innovation to try and get it back to ourselves? So that when we are talking about using it, is it serving us or is it already pre-tuned to other people? That training, that is for me is an opportunity in the industry that calls for us to get more innovators, people who are creators into the industry. But again, at a level of training, we are going to have to train ourselves in terms of more verification desks, people to verify that what we're feeding out people there. Do we have a new structure that has now come into the information system, in the dissemination and gathering, in verification and fact-checking? That is going to be very, very important for us, because it comes, we have to adapt and say, everything that comes to us, how has it been done? Can we find the background? What was it? What was fed into it? Because we are talking about data again. What are we giving it? There was a very interesting thing during the editors' convention last year when the use of AI. It was said, it was given an instruction to generate an image of an African doctor holding a Caucasian child. What came out was very interesting. It was a witch doctor, a sangoma, because in the AI training, a doctor in Africa is a witch. It's a witch, a sangoma holding a Caucasian child. So how do we begin now to get this technology to contextualize it, to work for us? These are opportunities. And I think for me, and when we are talking about media, there is a whole new creation that we have to look at. There is the demographic, who is feeding, who is getting into it. So we have more people coming in, innovate, adapt, and domesticate and use it for ourselves. Because technology for me, in short, is going to be a tool for us. It's made our work more efficient. We can do it faster. What I could turn around instead of going to the library to flip through hard copy, I can now get it at the tap of a button. Yes. I get that background I need. I need something about Professor, I'll just get it all aggregated in 10 seconds. So in the old days, Maina would go with a notebook to the library to start, give me a file of Professor. They start writing the notes and come typing. Efficiency, turnaround times, that's what technology does for us.
And of course, even when the internet came in, there was a lot of reluctance to actually go that direction. We're seeing the same reluctance right now. And many newsrooms say AI is actually not welcome here. And one wonders, that reluctance will not necessarily change the facts. AI is here with us.
AI is here with us. And it's one of those things you say, an idea whose time has come. Nothing can stop it. It's a future. It will never go away. Indeed, the best now you can do with AI is enter into that space and try to regulate it. Governments are already doing that, are beginning to think on how to regulate AI. Universities, how to deal with it. Because Prof, maybe you will also let her comment on that and tell us how it's affecting she's one of the elite universities in Kenya. Is it affecting acquisition of knowledge? How will you know this person has not read this story on AI and decided to type it with their own words? They have ways of finding out that. However, for media, it's a big opportunity. The sooner you start looking at it as an opportunity, the better. As you're saying earlier, as the internet started coming in, it was reluctantly accepted. But today there are no libraries now. In a library used to be as big as this studio, the library where we used to work. You could walk in and keep walking for 2-3 minutes in the library, looking for one file. Once you get that file, you spend with it like 4 hours. You can't imagine now how life has changed. AI now has taken it to the next level. And it's not the last frontier. I think more things are coming with the speed of change, as you can see. So what it does is it makes acquisition of information very fast. It helps you to perfect. It helps you to see others' ideas very quickly. Like earlier you asked, can journalism survive without finance? Maybe you should also have asked, can journalists survive without finance? One of the things I'm doing, the veterans like me and Ken are doing now, we've started new hustles that you youngsters do not know yet. We discovered that there are more journalists out here in the rain than in the newsroom. Retrenched, fired, there are so many. Many doing nothing, you can never even tell this guy was a journalist. So we are doing a kind of training where we are teaching them that you can survive on your own. By being creative. Yes. You can survive by being creative. We are teaching them, we are doing so many trainings on that angle to teach them to live again on your own, produce your own content, look for a channel to bring it out. And it's happening a lot. And those who find their niche are doing well. You can see there are so many people doing YouTube now. Podcast is becoming a big thing in big countries like the US. Yes. It's coming here also.
And that is freedom in itself.
That's what we are teaching them. Yes. And there nobody controls you. Yes. All we are teaching them is don't go the bad way. Stick within parameters. Stick within code of conduct for media practice. Stick within clean content. There is more to make within parameters than going the wrong way of dirty content. There is space and there is money to be made even when outside the newsroom. That's what we are teaching them.
Professor, on this issue of AI, what's your take?
So I was just looking at a tweet that I posted about 2 weeks ago when we were hosting the Digital Transformation Conference at the Aga Khan University. And I said, AI will not take away your job. Somebody who knows, or someone who knows how to use AI will, you know. And essentially what I was trying to say in a nutshell is that we have to embrace technology. We have to embrace the different tools that help us tell our stories. And it's important that we prepare our journalists, our students to be able to to use AI for the work that they're doing. I think there's something that Ken said about the data. That's an opportunity for us in the African continent to be able to influence, the output by ensuring that that data is accessible. When you go into AI, a lot of what you get is foreign content. Even when you ask it, and it's good to, one of the things that we do at the school is we actually allow our students to use it, and they're able to see the limitations of it. If you ask AI about your village, they have no idea where that is, okay? And they will ask you, could you describe it a little more? And it will, even with that, it will tell you, no. And then it might give you a comparison of another village in, a Western world that seems to have similar characteristics. So it's knowing how to use it, and it's also knowing the limitations that it presents, because there are things that it cannot do just yet, and that's an important consideration. But there's also a lot of good that AI enables us to do. I think I've seen stories, and the media houses will actually say, some of these pictures were AI generated, or we used AI tools to be able to authenticate, whether these were armed bandits or just people taking care of their livestock. I think there was a story that was done by The Nation when people were asking, are these bandits, are these terrorists, who are these people? I think it was in a place called Kaimuk, and they used AI tools to be able to tell what time of the day those people were actually walking in the area. What was the position of the sun vis-a-vis where they were? What sort of guns were they? Were these AK-47s or were they G3s? So the various ways in which you can leverage AI to help in telling a complete story. But the important thing is knowing how to use it, knowing that it has limitations. And I know that there are media houses that have started coming up with policies. I know Media Council is coming up with some guidelines, but internally media houses are also coming up with policies that then help journalists to be able to use to use AI. So interrogating, verifying, ensuring that there is data that's available, doing research that then provides the data that then would support AI or sustain AI in our context.
And I can see our time is up, so I'll give you each a few seconds to give you a parting shot.
I just wanted to mention something very briefly on AI, that I sat in the committee at the MCK that is trying to create guidelines on its use. But the larger body at national policy, the government does not have that policy. So regulation is important. Other country, Kenya is behind, it's trying to catch up. I don't know whether we have already started on crafting a national policy on the use of AI. There's also something that speaks to academy, which Professor Nancy was alluding to, that even at the academy, the way they're going to tweak their training, do they train journalists in that use of technology as they come into the newsroom? That is going to be another discussion. 2, how do we adapt it within the newsroom? Those are discussions. But the way AI has been with us for all, if you type your phone, Even that first thing telling you about spell check, that is still the technology. We are all using it, but how do we get the particular thing that works in our newsroom? So the thing is, World Freedom Day gives us a chance to step back and introspect and look at what are the opportunities and what are the limitations. And in here, there's one constant. The practice of journalism remains constant. We have only to know it can never change. It can only adapt to new systems in the way we serve society. And it's important that everything else will keep evolving, but our key tenets of being journalists and professionals will stand out. There will be risks, but those risks should not drive us out of business, but it's part of our territory that we have to walk into.
Thank you. Bwana Mwiruri?
As a media trainer and having been a regulator as the Media Council chairman, I would like to speak hope to journalism. You asked earlier where the profession is going. There is a lot of hope. We are in a better space than we were during our times. Universities are many now teaching journalism. Institutions that our day, you could be surprised, there was only one diploma college for government and one school of journalism in Nairobi. Now there are many places to train. Come out. The profession is still beautiful. And it's a job you love. When you love it, you can do it. Do not look at the doom side. The gloom is a lot also. No money, no salaries. Forget that language. You have the potential. You've been trained. You know the job. You can do it even on your own. So there is future. There is hope. And Kenya is the leading one in this region. I think even Africa now, we're in the range of South Africa. Let's utilize it. There's hope.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bwana Mwiruri, and finally, Professor Buka.
Thank you. So the theme of this year's World Press Freedom Day is a press for the planet. Of course, looking at the environmental crisis that the world is facing. And I think that alone should give so much hope to the media fraternity. Media is the go-to place when people are unable to make decisions about their lives. What's going on currently in the country, with all the flash floods, where do we go for that news information to be able to even know which route should I take this morning? I was asking Maina how he got here, because I think I have an idea of where he stays and whether the roads were flooded. And you go to the media, you go to, for credible news information, and you're going to credible sites, to be able to make decisions about your lives. We saw that during COVID, another crisis. And so there is hope in media. I think what is required is for all stakeholders to sit around a table and ask ourselves, how do we sustain this noble profession that is out to serve public interest and that helps people make informed decisions about their lives. And that sustainability does not have to be from one place that we have always imagined is a place, not government. There are many, many ways of sustaining the media business. We just need to come together.
Asante sana, Professor Nancy Buka, media scholar. Ken Busire from the Kenya Editors Guild, and Maina Mwiruri, immediate former chairperson, Media Council of Kenya. Our panelists this morning as we take a look at the World Press Freedom Day. Yes, it is being marked today, and yes, journalists around the globe have something to look forward to as we introspect into the space we currently occupy in a changing environment. Thank you so much. Today it is